amazing night. So we are obviously new in town, and we needed to get guests to do this. And so we have been humbled and very excited all week, just in the fact that there have been some amazing folks from DC and from the area who have been willing to come and join us on stage. These two folks not only were willing to come and join us on stage, but they came from farther away to do it than anyone else who we are talking to at all this week. So, you know, make it count, audience. First up, he is the U.S. editor for the Financial Times' Alphaville. Before that, he wrote for Dow Jones Financial News. He was an analyst for J.P. Morgan Chase. He grew up in Tampa, but he went to Georgetown. Woo! There would be at least one person. So, ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Cardiff Garcia. From New York City this morning. So this man has been, he's been on our show before, and he's a great friend of ours. So he is the senior economic contributor at American Public Media's Marketplace. He also writes regularly for Bloomberg Businessweek. He has several books, the most recent of which is called Unretirement: How Baby Boomers Are Changing the Way That We Think about Work, Community, and the Good Life. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Mr. Chris Farrell! Thank you so much. I all the way from New York and from DC. From New York and from St. Paul. I very much appreciate both of you for joining us. So thank you so much. There's so much to talk about. We were saying before the show even that there's sort of more to talk about than we can get to when we're just sort of saying the economy is what we're going to talk about in economic news. Let's just start with something easy. So the Federal Reserve. No, but the Federal. It's interesting to me. I feel like this story has gone along long enough now, like 4 or 5 years, that I'm starting to understand it. Where they keep saying, well, we're going to raise interest rates one of these days, and then everyone freaks out, and then they say, no, we're not, and then we all go back to normal. And so, how many more times can we do that? And when should I actually start to panic?
Well, I think you can wait quite a while yet before you go to panic, because part of what's going on is we have the unemployment rate is falling, it's coming down, but there's still a lot of people on the sidelines who are looking for work, would like to have work, and they're like not getting jobs. They're actually not even that confident that they're going to get a job. And the other thing is, there is no inflation. I mean, the other thing we've been saying for 5 years, the Fed has been saying, well, we want inflation to be running at a target rate of 2%. They can't get it to the target rate of 2%. So I think between those two things, they started a conversation. I think they regret that they started, because there's simply no reason for them to raise their rate anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about the Fed is that it used to be this kind of boring mechanical thing where it would adjust interest rates. If the economy was weak, then you lower interest rates, which makes it cheaper to borrow. So if you're a business, then you spend more money on hiring people and on new plants or whatever. And if you're a person, then you take out a mortgage or whatever. And the opposite obviously applies. The last recession was so severe that the Fed sort of lowered interest rates all the way to zero and couldn't lower them anymore. So essentially, what it resorted to was a couple of things. One was mechanically trying to influence different kinds of interest rates that it didn't directly influence before through a thing called quantitative easing, we're not going to talk about now. But the other thing that's really been fascinating is that the Fed essentially now operates via like a Jedi mind trick, right? It started to try to influence the psychology of the economy. So essentially what it would do, the technical term for this is forward guidance. And it's taken a lot of different shapes. But what it would say is, okay, we've lowered interest rates right now as much as we can. But we're also going to promise what we're going to do with interest rates into the future. So let's say you're a business and you're thinking about taking out a loan to invest some stuff, or you're a homeowner and you think maybe you want to take out a mortgage or you want to get a car loan or whatever. But you're worried that the Fed is going to screw up again, right? That the last recession was so bad, we might get another one of those. What if in the future the Fed fails to keep the economy growing? Well, what the Fed is saying is, look, not only are we going to keep interest rates low for now, we're going to keep them low into the future. And the key to remember is this: the Fed doesn't actually have to follow that, right? It's trying to induce economic activity now, but it could just bullshit you, okay? So the only thing that actually matters is whether or not the public believes it, whether or not the promise is credible. Okay, and so we're at a point now where historically, if you had 5.1% unemployment, as we do now, you would expect interest rates to be a little bit higher than they are, right? They're not, they're much lower. The Fed has essentially said, well, look, so much damage has ensued from the last recession that we're worried that it's going to take a lot longer for the economy to get back to the point where it can sort of have a self-sustaining, robust growth. And so the Fed made some promises. So far, it's sticking with them. But essentially what we're talking about now is the reversal of all that. So when it finally starts raising rates, right, it's essentially saying, okay, time's up. We've kept rates low for a very long time, but we think the economy is getting close to being sort of back to normal, and we can sort of, it's a little bit controversial, but now we can start raising rates, and the promise worked, we're done. And those people don't agree with me.
Sure. So just to toss this as a puzzle net, so we're all waiting for the kind of economic activity to pick up enough, so we're going to get a little bit of inflation, the Fed's going to raise its interest rates. But what if in a world of hydraulic fracking, Amazon, Uber, this global economy, we're pretty much around the price level that we're going to be. We have an intense global competition. We have global technologies that is largely a deflationary force. And whether we're living in a period like the end of the 19th century, actually from the end of the Civil War into about 1914, where there were ups and downs in the inflation rate, the fundamental price level was actually going down because we had these massive new technologies like mass production and electrification of society that drove prices down, and there's a question mark out there that the Fed may be waiting for an event that may not happen.
Oh God, it's waiting for Godot for
It is.
financial literates. I'm sorry, so just to unpack this a little bit, that idea, why wouldn't what are we, I mean, you mentioned what we're waiting for in terms of unemployment and things like that, but
The question is, why hasn't inflation really come about?
Yeah.
And there could be lots of reasons, but one of the reasons could be that as we're moving into this high-tech economy with big data and Uber and Amazon,
Yeah.
and these are driving down prices, and then you also think of the fact over the past 5 years, while inflation hasn't been going anywhere, central bankers have worried about inflation every day. They give speeches all the time about whether we have to worry about inflation. They have all supped at the cup that inflation is the thing that they need to worry about, and that is their job. So all central
Sounds
bankers,
gross, but-
central bankers are anti-inflation. They see that as their main part of their job. But we have technology that is transforming the global economy. And the fact is, despite everything that's happened the past couple of years, hardly anybody's retreating from the global economy. So that's pushing down
sure.
prices.
I was going to go ahead.
I can add a pretty cool technological angle to this. I think,
Please,
John.
I mean,
So it's-
I'm not
this is
lost.
all extremely speculative right now. But out of curiosity, how many people in the audience have seen a cover story in some magazine at some point in the last couple of years that described the robots coming to take my jobs?
Yeah.
Anybody? I should have thought this through better. The lights are in my face, so I can't actually see anybody raising their hand. Okay. But so the basic idea is this, and again, this is more a technology story right now than an economic one. But the basic idea is that in the past, whenever you'd have like these technological innovations, the economy would just adapt. So yes, the price of your TV would get cheaper, but you'd have more money to spend on going out to the theater and to restaurants and all that. So then the economy just shifted, so you get more jobs for, people who work at restaurants, chefs, waiters, sommeliers, whatever, and more actors and things of that nature. The question now is whether or not the technologies are starting to take over uniquely human jobs, right? Things that we never could have anticipated humans wouldn't be able to do. Things that involve, judgment, empathy, whatever. The best example I
Not
think
improv, though.
No, the best example being improv now. But I think when Chris talks about what might happen with the price level and stuff, I think what he's saying is that we might get to the point where technology is advancing so rapidly and taking over so many jobs that the economy itself remains in this kind of weird situation where the people who own those technologies make a lot of money, but nobody else has money to spend, and so you end up with this really divergent trend. Again, totally speculative. We have no idea if that's going to happen.
So we have like 5 more topics to get to, and, but I can't help but ask this one last question, because we talked a little bit about the Fed trying to play off of the psychology of the markets and whatnot. Does that actually, is there any evidence that that works, that you can actually do that you can Jedi mind trick the market?
It depends on how you define evidence. Okay, so I mean,
Thank you, Mr. Clinton.
Economists use like these, well, I mean, it's very hard. So economists use like these very complicated econometric techniques. The problem is that there's no unanimity over whether or not they're right. Economists themselves disagree about all this. And so you can use common sense, you can use some of these econometric studies, and you can try to sort of tease out cause and effect, but really it's pretty impossible.
However, if you look at, and just one little addition is, when you look at the behavior of the bond market, I think one of the things you take away is the Fed still has an enormous amount of credibility when it comes to inflation. That the Fed may make mistakes.
The inflation that's not happening is the thing that everyone trusts them on.
Inflation does happen, which may not happen, but if inflation does happen, that they'll respond well. Because if you look at Treasury inflation protected securities, which are a bet on the long-term inflation, they just are not seeing, higher than 2% inflation here in the United States over the next 10 to 20 years. So I think that the Fed has short-term, no one knows what they're doing or what they're thinking. Longer term, they have a pretty good idea that they believe they're going to succeed.
Good. Oh man, these shows just make me need another beer. So we started talking about globalization and whatnot. Cardiff, I know you've done a lot of reporting actually from Cuba, not just on Cuba, but from Cuba. So we were talking before the show a little bit. All of us are staying at an Airbnb knockoff. We could not afford Airbnb. But you did Airbnb in Cuba, and that was interesting.
So I think that the experience of Airbnb, which only this year was able to start advertising its services for Cuba, is a really kind of intriguing prism through which to understand not just the way that the Cuban economy is changing, but the way that the changes in the Cuban economy are interacting with the softening of diplomacy between Cuba and the U.S. Right? So I'll just tell you the story, and
Sure.
then you can sort of see what happens. So I stayed at a place that is advertised on Airbnb. Now, on the American side, Airbnb is allowed to book places in Cuba for Americans who can travel to Cuba legally, so who have one of like the general exemptions that they can travel. So if you have family there, if you're going as a journalist, as I was, actually I have family there too, so never mind. If you're going there on on a diplomatic mission, if you're going there on like a cultural thing or whatever, you can go. If you don't have one of those exemptions, you're not supposed to use it. If you're a European or an Australian or whatever, you're also not supposed to use it. But the way it works is that most people go to Airbnb and they just get the information, they get in touch directly with the person in Cuba on the other side. So they just get the information, they send it there, or they send an email to the person there. When you pay through Airbnb, Airbnb will handle the transaction. But in Cuba, a lot of these people don't have bank accounts, right? A lot of the hosts don't have bank accounts. So Airbnb will arrange through a Cuban payment company to have somebody physically deliver the money to the person who hosts the Airbnb there, right? Then you go to the Cuban side where internet access is incredibly restricted. So in my case, I was interacting with the daughter of the family who hosts the place. And she has internet access through her job there, which is a place that produces like Cuban journals. But it's monitored, and she's a little paranoid about it. There's still quite a lot of lingering paranoia from an earlier era. And so she can receive emails at work, but she can't send them back, right? Now, internet access in Cuba is very expensive for Cubans, right? So when I was there, I would use it at nearby hotels, about $10, the equivalent of $10 US an hour. This is a lot of money in a place where the average state given salary, which is most jobs there still, is about $20 to $25 a month, right? So it's very expensive to do that. So what she would do is she would take my emails whenever I'd have a question, okay? But when she needed to send an email, she'd go to one of these places where she'd pay by the hour, and she would type up the email as quickly as possible so she wouldn't use up that much of her allotted time. Then she would go like all the way back to work, and she got, I didn't know this at the time, but she got like pissed off when I'd asked some like piddling question about like, well, is there an air conditioner in the room or something like that? And she'd be like, dude, can you include all your questions in the same email? Because every time I have to get back to you on this, I have to run to the internet house and type up this super fast email and then go back to work. So you get sort of a sense of how like there's going to be an opening of commercial interactions between the two places. It's going to be very slow. There's still a lot of bureaucracy involved, not just on the American side, but very much on the Cuban side, which remember is still a place that's very poor, still has severe problems with things like there's no free press there, freedom of speech, dissidents still get rounded up, things like that. But there are parts of the economy, including these sort of bed and breakfast type places that are at least semi-privatized, like heavily taxed but semi-privatized, and those things are starting to interact with things that are happening between Cuba and the U.S.
And so I guess the question, and this is a broad, I mean this is very much about Cuba, but maybe it gets to a little bit broader globalization question in terms of, we had an embargo obviously, and we still do have an embargo, but the argument folks have made in terms of lifting the embargo is that's what's going to change things, right? Like the embargo just froze everything sort of in place. It's actually the rising of this market and then Cubans wanting to be freer to be able to interact with these things that would actually start to change things. I should have thought of a way to end that question.
I think Cuba is one of the classic examples of the failure of an embargo. And the cliche used to be if we had only traded Coca-Cola. Well, now it's if we only had used Airbnb earlier. And of course, you can have restrictions, you can have some limits, but you really do want to maintain that trade. I mean, that sort of there's a dissolvent in capitalism, and there's a dissolvent in trade. People exchange ideas. You can't help but exchange ideas with capitalism. And the other thing was we had an embargo, but the rest of the world didn't have to have an embargo with Cuba. So it was kind of like an odd mix of things. But I think Cuba is a classic example that an embargo is a terrible policy. Sanctions can make a lot of sense, or sanctions on certain types of materials and goods, certain type of trade. But if we've had a back and forth with Cuba over the past 50 years, I think a lot of the situation that, like with Airbnb, didn't exist before, but a lot of that kind of movement that you're describing would have happened a lot earlier.
Well, and trying to interact with Cuba now after we've had this embargo for this long is really complicated, right? Like, I mean, it's not as simple as, even you've explained with Airbnb, but if a new company wants to go in, they can't just sort of set up shop and start taking customers' credit cards. They have to they have to go through, they have to be a government agency almost, right?
Yeah, I mean, so this is something, so I too favor ending the embargo, and certainly the vast majority of Cubans do, and you can see that not just in, quasi-official polls, but you can see it in, there's a great secretive poll done earlier this year by Fusion and Univision.
How do you do a secret poll? Like, hello?
You should invite those guys to be on the show. No, it's they fanned out across the island. They almost got in trouble. But one of the things that the poll showed was that something like 97% of Cubans want the embargo to end. That being said, of all the Cubans I've spoken to, there's also a tremendous amount of skepticism about whether or not just ending the embargo necessarily means that their own government is going to loosen things up in a way that they'd like. So let me give you just one example of how foreign companies have trouble doing business in Cuba. They're starting to make exemptions to this, but right now, if you're a foreign company and you want to invest in Cuba or you want to sell things in Cuba, you have to be in partnership with the government. And you're not just a partner, you're a secondary partner. The Cuban government typically takes a 51% stake. Now you might think, well, fine, it's a state-run government, it's a state-run economy, that's the way they do things, you know what you're getting into. But the more pernicious thing is that you can't hire your own employees there. Obviously, you're going to interact with them if they work in your hotel or whatever, but the way it goes is that the Cuban government hires them. To pay their salaries, you pay the relevant Cuban ministry. So if it's a hotel, you pay the Ministry of Tourism in hard currency, in foreign currency. The Cuban government, okay, which oversees two currencies in the country, one that's convertible to hard currency and therefore is quite valuable, and another one that's just a state peso, right, pays its employees in that cheaper peso. So imagine like the PR problem with an American company going in there saying, okay, I want to invest in Cuba, but now I'm going to be in partnership and a secondary partner, a minority partner with the communist government there, and I have this problem of like, are employees being exploited? Now again, these things are starting to change. The Cubans are working on something that's a little bit more sensible, and they're going to make some exceptions, and I think this is the kind of thing that you hope would improve over time. But right now, you sort of hear a lot of, oh, you know, you have to get to Cuba before like the Americans get there, and there's a Starbucks on every corner or whatever. I think that tends to be kind of an ill-informed opinion. It's not going to be quick. This is going to take some time, and a lot actually has to change, not just on the American side, but also on the Cuban side.
So this goes to, it definitely is a broader piece about, and Chris, you were starting to allude to this. A lot of this is super complicated. I took an economics class once, but there's a lot to this. And then we do look to economics, or we look to the Fed, or we listen to our public radio station, or read the Financial Times, and we expect there to be some sort of explanation at the end of the day. This is why these markets did this. This is why the Dow went up or down, X, Y, or Z. But then, you know, you mix in this insanity sort of in trying to do inter-country trade, or, you know, something happens, there's some sort of, you know, rock slide in China, and all of a sudden diapers are more expensive, and in all seriousness, like, I just feel like it's, are we trying to make sense of something that, I'm not just saying this because the Pope is in town, are we trying to make sense of the universe in a way that only a holy man can do?
Yeah, the thing is, just take your example of the stock market. Most of the time, no one has any idea why the stock market went down, why the stock market went up. We attribute reasons. We provide that, well, this seems to make sense. This was something we hadn't expected. This is probably what people were upset. If you look at all the stocks in the United States that are traded, why do and the index, but only the index is only a little bit. Why they go up? Why they go down? Who has a clue? The only thing you can say is that over time, that there are underlying major trends that do unfold. And they do end up reflecting in the economy, and the stock market at some point does end up reflecting what's going on in the economy. The stock market's not the economy, but it does end up reflecting what's going on. So over a period of time, you can kind of get a sense of what's happening, but here's the problem. Once you kind of get a sense of how the world is going and how it's moving, what is happening, and this is the underlying trend, you're really going to things like productivity and what companies are doing, the world changes on you. And the framework that you were using to understand the world, it never works again, or it doesn't work as well. And this is why you have your people on Wall Street, like, you know, in the 1980s was Henry Kaufman, and Henry Kaufman would make these pronouncements. And the thing is, Henry Kaufman came out of inflationary Germany. He was a refugee. He had a particular point of view about how the debt markets work, and it was wonderful. He really captured this rising budget deficit, rising interest rates that most American economists didn't believe could happen. But then the thing is, things started to come down, and he kept saying again and again, no, interest rates are going to go back up. The budget deficit is going to get ever worse. Everything's going to get bad. And it changed. So I think, yes, the world is way too complicated, and that's the magnificent thing about the markets, is that it's the largest chat room in the world. And it's lots of gossip, and it's lots of knowledge, and it's lots of ignorance, and it's a lot of stupid people, and it's a lot of really smart people. And the thing about it is that you can have, you know, someone can, through the information in the markets, can figure out that there's an opportunity to sell someone a product or a service on the other side of the world.
There's a famous quote by an economist named John Kenneth Galbraith, who said that economic forecasting exists to make astrology look respectable. And I think that kind of applies double to trying to explain the markets, right? And it's true, and I think those of us who are in economics and finance journalism are sort of all part of the same hypocrisy on this one, because it's been kind of a convention for, you know, since as far back as I can remember, that you have to have some kind of explanation in the lead of any story that explains why stocks went up or stocks went down. And I used to have an argument with an editor about this all the time, and I finally told him that if he ever asked me to write something like that again, I'm just going to say stocks are up because other stocks are up, and that would be it. We don't know what's going on. I think everything that Chris just said is absolutely right, and
I'm nervous.
You should have some humility about that.
I'm nervous you guys talked yourselves out of a job. So if you just, what will happen tomorrow?
Is somebody going to see this?
Or alone.
Walter Wriston was the head of Citibank. It was Citibank back then. He was a legendary head of Citibank. It was a large bank that got in a lot of trouble. But he hired a bunch of economists, I think it was 90 economists, and their job was to forecast what interest rates were going to be the next day. And he paid these economists a lot of money. And what they realized is they had no clue, so they just simply took the closing price, what the interest rate was at the end of the day, and told them that's what it was going to be tomorrow. And it worked for about 3 years until he finally figured out what they were doing.
I thought that I was not smart enough to get into finance, but apparently, but they know that one now. I can think of another one. We're going to bring our two guests back in the second half. I know I haven't asked Chris yet about what any of this means for retirement, which I want to, and then we also want to open it up to all of you for your questions. But for right now, we're going to go take our seats in the audience. So can you please do a big round of applause for our two amazing guests? We're going to turn the stage over to the cast of the Theater of Public Policy. Everything that they do is entirely unscripted and made up right now based on whatever we just talked about. This is all improvised, so please be generous and make a big round of applause for the Theater of Public Policy.
Looking at? Yeah. Yes, we've got some guy down in Cuba who's willing to give us a...
Oh, I just thought of something. My sister Carol might come with us.
Okay.
You asked if there's going to be room for her. Like,
Okay,
a futon or something?
Senor Robinson, we are... I don't need to talk like that. Senor Robinson, we are going to have a third guest. Will that be okay?
God damn it! Oh! Let me get back to you in 15 minutes. Ah!
Sounds very nice.
Yeah, they spelled out R. Okay. Okay, we'll just...
Yes, that will be fine. Anything else?
No, we are good for now. We'll see.
Oh, wait, are they going to have a pool? Well, you can send another email.
Okay.
Ask about the pool. I need to know what I need to...
Oh, sure. Senior Jim, are you going to have a pool? Question mark.
We will get one if you will quit sending these goddamn questions!
Okay.
Honey, I just think that our relationship is going so well, but I just keep waiting for something bad to just happen. It's just like, nothing bad has happened yet. But like every day when you come home from work and you're like, whoa, and how was your day? And I say like, it was good, but something terrible may happen tomorrow. That's no way to live.
But something terrible could happen tomorrow.
I know, but you can't just like come, but we have children that run around. They say, Mommy, I love you. And you say, well, I love you, but I might be dead tomorrow. Like, you can't do that.
No, I don't want to lie to their children.
Okay, that's just lucky. That's just lucky that there's, okay, well now, you are going to be so smug about this.
Come in, my friend. So you want to know your economic forecast?
Yes, I need to know what to do with my 401k, whether I should divest...
Sit. Madam Veronica will feel the bumps on your head. And I will tell you the economic forecast for the upcoming week.
What was it yesterday? It's going to be 5%.
Should I invest in heavy metals and natural resources?
Madam, here are those fortune cookies you ordered for lunch. I'll just leave them here.
What was the question again?
Should metals, natural resources?
You are about to find a mysterious answer appealing.
I would say invest.
The robots are coming! The robots are coming! Oh my God! There's gonna be a robot sommelier any second, and I won't have a job!
Oh my God! Christopherson, what else will we do if we can't smell wine?
I have no idea. We must sabotage this robot.
The mouthfeel is excellent.
I got another one.
You're going to love the color.
All right, here we go. I have 3 bottles of wine. Where's the third? Here he is. All right. They're awfully cheap. All right.
like this because I know, based on your past experiences and employing the empathy that I was given, that you prefer deeper, more buttery smells, and this one is far too citrusy.
Deeper, more buttery smells will equal this one. You will enjoy it.
God damn it!
I give this wine a 9.87777777.
And the mouthfeel is good.
Excuse me, sir, come here for a second. Just, you don't have to get down either. Look out at the sunset, look at the sunset. I'm wondering if you would like to take part in a secretive poll.
Of course I would. Nothing ever happens to you. Yeah, right, yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to phrase it as a statement. It's going to have nothing to do with it, so read between the lines, okay?
I keep looking this way.
Butter is good on bread.
In the morning.
What?
I don't know. I'm rubbing my tailbone against the chair. I don't know why.
You have to answer with some sort of interpretive dance.
Oh, right.
Okay. And butter meaning Cuba, bread meaning...
Right.
Okay.
What's going on here?
Talking about butter and bread, sir. Just butter and bread.
Looks mighty suspicious. Aren't you supposed to be in your government jobs?
Welcome back from work, honey. Did you find anything interesting on the street?
There's a lot of secret polls going on. Yes. I mean, it was much easier when they're doing it out in the open. Their little stands up, taking the survey.
Well, what did you do with the secret pollers?
I bumped them.
There you
I
go.
bumped them good.
Yeah, was there blood?
Yes. The nightstick needs a bit of washing.
Uh-oh. It's all sticky. Did you use it more than once?
I found 5 of them today.
You. I gotta bleach this for sanitary reasons now. I wish they would be out more out in the open. I wanted to tell you, honey,
Wait, just let me do this.
I got a new autumn.
Great.
Yes. Listen, honey, here, hang on.
I use margarine.
I wanted you to know, honey, that our son got in trouble today. Well, I don't even know if I should. But you know, he got in trouble today because he took a secret poll. He was found dancing in gym class, but it wasn't their dancing unit. They're in dodgeball right now.
The bleach will have to wait. I need the stick back.
We need sugar, but we have an embargo with the neighbors.
Report back.
What are we going to do? We cannot have snickerdoodle cookies without sugar, but this embargo has been going on for 2 months.
I am going to put sugar on eBay as a trade, and then they will find it, and then we will start to trade sugar, and then brown sugar, and then I have no idea.
You sound like
It's the sanctions that are screwing us up.
I know it.
Honey, the Thompsons are really feeling the turn of the screw now that they're trying to make the sugar.
Taste it. It just tastes like cardboard and quinoa.
That'll teach them for trying to get into my azaleas.
We gotta soften this a bit. We gotta make some kind of détente.
They're trying to do a détente. It's not going to work.
What's a détente?
I do not know. We will discover it soon.
I know they've been watching us. Why don't we cook?
Oh, and they will think that we're cooking,
Right.
and that we don't need them.
Right, yeah, and then they'll come begging. Okay, here we go.
All of the pots and pans.
What do they think they are doing? They don't have any sugar. They can't cook. They can't cook. My embargo is being very, very much violated.
Oh, what's this?
I noticed that they've been very resourceful. You know, they don't have to depend on us, their neighbors. They don't have to depend on anyone. They just have to, just be themselves. What are they doing?
I do not understand the motions they're making. It's like they're pantomiming cooking, but they've nothing to cook with. I know, because last month was our egg embargo. Ain't not an egg in the house.
Let's put it in the oven. Wow. We'll open the top one just to make it look like.
They're opening the top one. It really looks like they're cooking. I don't understand. We better go over and investigate. I'll do the talking.
Okay, you do the talking.
Now wait a minute. Now when I say I do the talking, what does that mean you do?
It means you do the talking.
That's right.
Oh my goodness, someone's here!
Hello.
Hey, oh shit.
Well, you crossed the street.
You will be wearing the nightgown tonight. Hello! Neighbors!
I thought you smelled something delicious and had to run right over.
Yeah. Well, we only have enough for 2.
I'm gonna play bird fellow swimming across ironic island sanctuary. Please take me in your house. Here, we have some bittersweet chocolate chips. Thank you very much. Honey, I'm not coming home. Do me a favor, Pay me, and I'm gonna give some to her, and the rest of the pesos I'll just use when I go outside. Just keep me in your house and away from her.
How does it feel? Bless us here.
Alright, step up for the Federal Reserve chicken run. We're gonna sign up for tonight. We got a lot of chickens with a lot of numbers.
Hey, sir, I'd like to take part in this.
What number do you like, sir? We got a lot of them.
27.
27. The interest rate's gonna go up 27%. Alright, do we have any other chicken numbers? Chicken numbers.
15.
Yeah, we want
15. 15%.
Yeah, 15.
High. But you guys, we got a 27 and a 15. And then we've got the starter, 0. Eternal champion, undefeated 5 years running. All right, chickens are in their gates, they're ready to go. And they're off. Zero, the champion again. Better luck next time. Thank you.
Sir.
I want an egg.
Here. Drink from this cup.
Tastes the same.
No, we're all drinking from that cup. Drink again. That feeling of optimism? You feel it just dissipating out of your system?
It starts full in the beginning, and then it just.
Yeah, man, well, you have the first known orally transmitted through liquid case of, like crap. So that euphoria you were feeling is actually a disease. Were you sharing a cup by chance?
Yes, this one I brought it with me.
Nope.
But I like the feeling, so I just don't. I'm not going to take any.
This happens very frequently when people think that they are sharing a universal feeling of unity and you know having being in the same boat with their cohorts. It actually is the best way to have there be bacteria and virus infect everybody. It's a terrible, terrible paradigm.
But if all of us are infected, then none of us are infected.
Why do I try?
We're all infected.
You're gonna raise the interest rates.
I'm going to raise the interest rates.
You're gonna go talk to the people and tell them why we broke our promise.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes, you will be.
You know something that only a few people do. I can tell by the look on your face.
Your taxes are going up.
Well, that's obvious. Tell me about my interest rates.
I'm raising it.
We'll tell them about the interest rate in song.
I'm raising it. It's going up. I feel the energy inside me.
I'm inflating while you talk. Go on, tell me more. You'll see that nobody else has ever before.
I have the power, and I'm gonna use it.
God.
You'll bow.
And I thought I had free will.
Suggesting the audience doesn't have free will, and we're going to ask them questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage our two guests, Cardiff Garcia and Farrell. So, this is the part of the show where we actually like to turn it over to you all to ask questions of our two guests, and we like to give you all a chance to practice. So if you want to turn to the person next to you and ask them a question that you would like to ask of one of our guests, you'll have a chance to rehearse your question and make a friend. All right, ready, set, go. And then I'll probably repeat it just to get it in the microphone. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and I will call. Yes, right there in the middle.
All right. So my question's about the health of American economics. What I mean by that is we seem to have a system where economic or social mobility is more difficult than it's ever been. And people that have wealth and assets can pass that along to their children and entrench that. People that don't have assets find it increasingly difficult to move in our society. So my question broadly is our system healthy, and is American economic model at risk? Because people, although it may be good for shareholders and owners, is it good for individuals?
So I think,
You guys, all right, next question.
I think the healthy American economy is, we're in pretty bad straits. That what is happening is, a large part of it, you think about the American dream or immigrants coming into society, a lot of it is that your children are going to do better than you did. And that if you're born into poverty, that doesn't mean that your children are going to be born into poverty. And what has happened is that was a story that was true for a long time in the United States, but it's less and less true. And now when you compare us to Europe or you compare us to Canada, we have less social mobility here. And we still have social mobility, and then there's interesting research where if you look at different sectors of the economy, if you look at the Twin Cities in Minnesota, or you look at the Bay Area, San Jose, and California, you actually have a lot of social mobility. You look at places, say, in Atlanta, you have very little social mobility. So I think this is really, this is one of the big challenges, one of the big issues over the next 20 years that we're going to be dealing with, and we haven't been dealing with it. And there was a talk that was given by Narayana Koshtakota, who's the head of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, and we gave a speech back in 1979 when Paul Volcker was head of the Federal Reserve. And that was a time, and you look at it, you'll remember, that was a time when people really believed you could not defeat inflation. That inflation was the disease of democracy. That inflation was really because of all the special interests. And you could maybe do 10%. You could keep inflation around 10%. That was as good as could get. And Volcker said nonsense. And now here we're having a conversation 30 years later about, well, can we get inflation up to 2%? So what Coach Lakota talked about is we're at a similar time of testing. And we're at a time of testing when it comes to the job market. And we're at a time of testing when it comes to opportunity. And there's some bright signs there, some movement with early education, with at-risk kids, and there's some signs that things are moving in the right direction. But we need to do a lot more. That is the big economic challenge that this society faces over the next 2 decades. And it's going to take a lot of work because too many people are underemployed, too many people are unemployed, and too many people because are in poverty and don't see a way out. So yes, I think we are not that healthy.
I would approach this question a little bit differently because one of the things that makes it hard to answer is that the trend you're talking about predates the last recession, right? And economists have really struggled to figure out how much of the sluggish growth we've had in the last few years, well, since the recession itself, is the result of trends that are secular, that have been going on for some time, the rise in income inequality being the main one, and which of them are still part of the legacy of what actually was a tremendously severe financial crisis and subsequent recession. And so we know, for instance, that since the 90s, actually, that workers have been taking a smaller share of the overall income made by the economy, right? That a lot more has been going to companies. And I mean, everything I'm saying right now is contentious, but that, I think, is something that's fairly well established, okay? Now, there are all kinds of explanations that economists give for this: technological changes, globalization, things that, by the way, in the long run are good things, things that we want, but that can really cause a lot of short-term disruption to the lives of people, especially middle-class workers, right? And that interacts with the recession itself. And I keep coming back to it because I don't think we can underestimate its legacy, in the sense that the kinds of things that economists deem to be structural, longer-term things, okay, we try to separate those things from what are cyclical. In other words, the things that we can expect to get better over time so long as policy is good. The problem is that the longer that cyclical damage lasts, it becomes structural. There's an easy way to think about this, which is just that if you're out of work for a very long time, okay, it's not just that you're not making money then, it's that you're losing your contacts, you're losing your skills. It gets that much harder to get back into the labor market. So there's a big difference between somebody who's been unemployed for 3 months and somebody who's been unemployed for 3 years, right? And that can leave not just on that individual's life, that can leave a lot of lasting damage to the economy itself.
So to try just to have a tiny bit of hope with some of this is, you mentioned there are places that are doing better with some of this than other places. So what are the things that seem to work to some degree, or what should we be trying at least?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I mean, part is where if you look at, say, the Bay Area, you just simply have a white-hot economy. You just have a very strong economy. And one of the things in terms of this impact of the recession, you just can't underestimate how important strong economic growth is. And when it is, so as Larry Summers says, you want an economy where workers aren't looking for jobs. Firms are looking for workers. And that's when the economy is strong. So in the Bay Area, a lot of it just has to do with there's a very low unemployment. There's essentially a zero unemployment rate in large parts of the Bay Area. If you look at the Twin Cities, you have an extremely strong civic culture. You have a very strong nonprofit community that tries to be as inclusive. Now, there are lots of flaws, not as good as it should be. Nevertheless, that's what's going on there. And so, and I think that we're also seeing some signs of, as you mentioned, I wrote this book on unretirement, and what you're seeing is a very exciting movement about people deciding that, they've gained all this knowledge and this skill and experience over the years, and they don't want to walk away from that completely, and they're trying to figure out a way to both earn an income in the traditional retirement years, but also give back and give meaning. So I don't think it's a completely bleak picture, but there are some real issues in terms of the economy not growing fast enough to generate the kind of job growth that we like to see that would give labor more power relative to capital. And then also there are sectors in our economy where that's where things like early childhood education becomes so important, that with early childhood education, you just get a leg up in our society rather than being weighed down.
Yeah, I would add quickly 2 things. I mean, one is there are still pockets of hugely impressive innovation within the U.S. economy. I don't think anybody would deny that. The second thing is that we've actually learned a really key lesson since the recession that we weren't really sure about in the 2000s. And it's not just a lesson that we've learned from the U.S., but from all across the developed world, right, from Europe and Japan, which is that actually the official sector, and by that I mean the combination of the central bank and the government, right, actually has a lot of space to work. And by that I mean that we can borrow a lot more money to invest in things. The government can borrow a lot more money than we once thought possible to invest in the economy and to make it better. And I would quickly add that this doesn't have to be a left versus right thing, a free market versus an interventionist thing. If you want to think that the government should be sending money directly to low-income households rather than investing in infrastructure or whatever, that's fine. That's a different conversation. But the point is that the government has a lot of fiscal space to work. It hasn't actually deployed anywhere close to all that it could deploy in combating the effects of the last recession. but we've learned that it does have the capacity to do so. I can tell you that if we run into another catastrophic downturn, I'm a little bit comforted by that, because part of the problem is that it hasn't been used.
Wait. You're comforted by another downturn?
That if we get into one of those things, that we've learned that the government can do something about it, right? The bigger question is whether or not the politics will work. But this is an economics thing, so I won't even go there.
Okay, good. Other questions? Yes, up there.
All right, I'll preface this by saying I'm one of these absolutely useless economists that actually doesn't know what we're doing up here. But in all this, like, we talk a lot about it's not enough, it's not good enough, it's not healthy, the economy's not doing better. And in my mind, that begs the question, what is good enough? And more importantly, given the political climate and that we're in Washington, D.C., what are the key things that you would like to see debated in the upcoming elections around making the economy good enough, by whatever interpretation?
I love this is like just a Jewish mother question. What's good enough for you? It's a good question. So what should we be talking about?
Well, I think one of the things, just building off of what you said, is, what Washington, D.C. should be talking about is, you just have to, look at our ports, look at our roads, look at our airports, and you just don't have to be, our infrastructure needs are enormous. And when you have interest rates as low as they are, so the cost of capital is really low, and if you can raise the productivity of the infrastructure, that's going to benefit business, that's going to end up showing up in the wages of workers. That to me just seems to be the no-brainer issue that's out there, which is why aren't we addressing a lot of this? And there might be a little bit of waste, but corporate America wastes a lot too when we're investing. And the other thing is, there's some good ideas about a national infrastructure bank that can help minimize some of the concerns. So one of the big things that I just don't understand is why we are not simply investing more in infrastructure that is crumbling, that is hurting productivity, that is hurting profits, and that is hurting worker wages. The other thing that I would love to see people talking about, and they're not, is creating incentives for people to work longer, to continue to contribute, to continue to pay taxes. And there's a lot that the federal government can. I mean, one of the things that I do not understand, 42% of private sector workers do not have access to a retirement savings plan with their employer. So 1/3 of U.S. households don't have access to an employer-sponsored retirement savings plan. This makes no sense. Guess what? We're aging. People do need to save for the retirement. There's all kinds of good ideas about how to do it. Open up the federal thrift savings plan, one of the best defined contribution plans in the world. There's all kinds of good ideas out there. Just do something about it. But it seems like people want to sort of complain about it and not actually do something, and that something is not that hard.
Nobody ever asked the candidates about monetary policy. Hugely important. And nobody ever asked them, well, if you were in charge, who would you appoint to the Fed, right? Not just to run the Fed, but who would you appoint to the FOMC? And I think it's a big mistake given how important it is. And I guess one of the reasons they never get asked about this is because maybe the assumption is that they're too dumb to talk about it. And I'm not saying that's wrong, all right? But I think it's something that always goes underexplored and underdebated. And then when somebody becomes president, we're sort of left to wonder exactly what their views are, what kinds of advisors they would turn to on monetary policy. And I think it's a shame.
Without saying that necessarily like particular people to appoint to those, are there traits or things that you're like, oh, these are if I were to ask a political candidate and who they would appoint to this, and they didn't say, oh, this person, but these are the things I would look for in a person, what would that be?
Part of this, I don't want to impute my beliefs on anybody else. I mean, part of this depends on whether or not you have a bias towards looser policy now or tighter policy now. The ability to forge consensus has clearly become very important since the Greenspan years, right? Bernanke was pretty good at it, Janet Yellen's pretty good at it. And it's sort of clear now that when you have to sort of steer this, you have to wrangle this committee, which, by the way, its composition changes each year because there's a substitution of 4 of the regional bank presidents each year. It's a hard job, right? You have to be able to listen. You have to be able to steer them in your direction when that's necessary. And I think that's hugely important. The second thing is somebody who's really able to communicate well with the public. We talked about the Jedi mind trick earlier, forward guidance. Communication has become a massively important part of the Federal Reserve's job. I happen to think Janet Yellen is fantastic at it, right? People disagree with me, but I think that's what you want to look out for.
Okay, I want to make sure I leave time. Was this a hand right here? I'll go up there. I don't want to ask all boy questions, but I already I'm looking, the two men raise their hands, so yes, right here though, I'm gonna break my rule. Go ahead.
So as economic journalists, if you had to pick one storyline that you think is a myth, whether, and you can debate whether these things are myths or not, whether it's that there's a student loan crisis or that China is going to overtake the U.S. as a world power, what do you think is falsely written about?
I'm not squinting at your question, by the way. There's a spotlight right above it. And we have to worry about the national debt. I think that should be, I'm not saying you totally ignore it, but I would put that at like number 297 or something.
Yeah.
Oh, that was easy. So, ma'am, yes.
I guess I'm not totally sure how to word this, but you were talking about the San Francisco Bay Area, the economy being very strong and unemployment being very low. I think the DC area has generally also gotten along pretty well since the recession. But, and I don't know San Francisco well, but I feel like it has the same issue with DC where it has like a lot of very, very wealthy people and then a lot of people who are employed but have like really shitty paying jobs. And I guess my sense, I personally feel like that's morally wrong, but like from an economics perspective, I feel like that's also bad for the economy to have some people who are
Underemployed?
yeah, like underemployed and not, or people who just aren't making enough to live on. So I guess what are your thoughts about that?
No, I think that this gets at a very core issue, and just a couple of thoughts. One is, as our economy has evolved, metropolitan areas have become increasingly important. That is really, we've become a metropolitan area economy. Cities' economies have gotten, on a global scale, and particularly with the U.S., have gotten very, very important. What you see in a lot of cities is the big divide between college-educated or post-secondary education and not having a post-secondary education. And that really does play out. So, my feeling is that when you look at a lot of cities and you're looking at minorities and low income, and you look at a place like DC, or you look at the Bay Area, or you look at New York City, there still are a lot more opportunities than in the cities that are growing really slowly, that the cities are not expanding, and that our eyes are a little bit deceiving. And that if you look at New York City, the recent data is that Hispanics and blacks with a college education have benefited disproportionately from the expansion of the information technology business in those cities. So I think it's a very mixed picture, but overall, I think that you just hit on the issue that troubles everybody, which is, how do you keep the dynamism and the creativity and the innovation and the risk-taking in an economy, and at the same time provide a living wage for and include everybody that is within that economy. And a lot of our discussions is really debating about how do you best do that.
And by the way, there's one easily identifiable obstacle to that kind of dynamism, especially in urban areas. Rental costs, right? This is a problem certainly in San Francisco. It's definitely a problem in New York. From what I understand, I don't live here in DC, it's getting worse, right? Now, there's a very kind of contentious debate over what's causing it, right? But anti-density codes, right, in places that want density, and also enforced density codes in places that don't want it, like my hometown of Tampa, right? And the whole thing ends up leading to urban sprawl because the people who want the big single-family homes just end up going further out into the suburbs, right? But in cities in particular, this is a huge problem. Housing becomes scarce relative to the people who want to go there, and this doesn't just exacerbate the inequality problem in those cities, right? It also keeps more people from moving to those places, and in some cases it's so bad that people actively leave because of it, right? This is terrible. This is people who want to be there, who want to work in a place where they're going to benefit from all of the kind of synergies or whatever you call it that you get from being in a place where a lot of people in your industry work, where you can bounce ideas off each other, where you can form teams and things like that. That is a huge problem. I don't see any obvious way around it. A lot of this is caused by state and local rules rather than things that are set at the federal level, but it's something that I really wish would get a lot more attention.
So we're over time, but I do want to try and end on an optimistic or forward-looking note to some degree, not and without declaring war on the states or the cities. So I wanted to sort of ask both of you about who's our savior? Like who's going to, not because the Pope's in town, but who's going to fix this? And I'm going to set Chris up here by saying, is it the folks who are not retiring? Are they going to save us?
No.
All right, let's show everyone.
Here's the thing. You have this grassroots movement around the country of people who are rethinking the second half of life. And it's really exciting. It's an experiment. But the thing is, anybody who's been involved in experiments, some of them don't work out. All right? But the thing that's really exciting about the baby boomer experimentation, rethinking the second half of life, is what it means for my 23-year-old, that when he's in his 50s, he's going to have a whole different expectation and path laid out for him. Because look at the experiments, what works, what doesn't work. So I actually think the millennial generation, the younger generation, what the baby boomers are doing is exciting for them. Not necessarily so much for the boomers, but for the younger generation. Because they have a very different image of the second half of life and what you can get out of the job market, what you can get out of life.
Let me go with two categories because I totally agree about young people. They're, by the way, they've just become, I think the ages 20 to 24, they've just become the biggest cohort in the country, right? So yeah, we're looking at some pretty difficult demographic trends over the next like 15 years or so. But after that, this is a generation that just went through a brutal recession, learned some really valuable lessons. Just as, during the Great Depression, that was a group of people that saved a lot of money. They were industrious, they were thrifty. I think they're going to be a big benefit. And let's not forget immigrants, who also help a tremendous amount with the demographic issue. And by the way, they're the reason that the U.S. isn't facing the kind of ending of the demographic dividend that, for instance, Japan has been enduring for the last 20 years or so. I think, I don't want to make this like too political, but if we're talking about people that help save us, these are people that come here, they work their asses off, they make it a more dynamic economy, and they also bring with them demand for housing and goods and things like that. They're part of what makes the U.S. what it is, and I think, we ought to be grateful.
That is such a beautiful note to end on. Turn the stage over one last time to the cast of the Theater of Public Policy. Again, this is all made up, so please, round of applause.
Dan, I want you to know that I fully support you going back to work. That your generation still has a lot to contribute, and know that I want you to feel confident that your assets will take care of me when you're gone.
I'm 89 years old. I work in a coal mine.
Yes. But now you can go back. You can still contribute.
When the hell are you moving out of my house?
What?
I'm leaving you.
Ricardo, I had no idea.
Had enough. I woke up this morning and I thought, you know what? I can do this on my own. I can do this on my own. Infrastructure is getting its own bank.
What about all the things I do for you? Like pack your lunch, Ricardo. Spit in your sandwich every day because we have been unhappily married for a very long time. Who will do that for you now?
Creating my own bank. Gonna make a table. It's gonna be steady. Gonna eat on that table. That's not even a metaphor. I'm gonna eat on it. I'm gonna climb on that table and have my potato salad.
Who will fight in front of the children with me? Who will give them the emotional scars that they will use later to go to therapy? Who will do that? Will they get that from television? From the violence that they want from television? I don't know, Ricardo. I don't know. Do you?
I could help.
All right, you kids. All right, everybody sit down. It's the high school auditions for Economy Today. Now, listen. Oh, good, you came too. Get up there. Get up there. Oh, yeah, that's what happens when you take a crap. This is what
I have no interest in doing this show. This was something that the music teacher was supposed to do. His attempted take at his own life did not end well, so he's going to be on absent marks for the rest of the semester. So ta-da! Here we are. All right. As you know, Economy the Musical is groundbreaking work by the guys who did Lease. It was a knockoff of Rent. So there's a lot involved in this musical. If you think that you're good enough to be on par with my vision, then that's great. Red Shirt, I want to see you take front and center. I'd like you to do the monologue that you prepared about when Tobias comes back from work and he finds that he has lost his job.
It would help me if I could have a Tobias rather than a space person.
Yeah, this is good. It's good to help hit the marks. This is good.
By the way, I enjoyed sharing a locker with you. Okay, all right.
All right, keep it out of the band room. All right. Yeah. Go ahead whenever you're ready and stuff.
Okay. Tobias, I should have told you that I was high density before you came here. Oh wow. Wow. This is the best scene partner I've ever had. You should have asked. You know, I can't do everything for you, Tobias. I really can't. I mean, I have tried, and I have worked on hunches, and I have flat out said, I don't know what the hell is going on, and you stood firm. And I want to thank you for that, Tobias. I want to thank you.
Hold him close. Good, thank you. That was very good. You may sit down. Thank you. That was good.
I don't want to sit down.
No, it's
He was holding on to me, but thank you. Jim, we're on Church Street.
So I've never speed dated before, and this is kind of awkward, but I want to be honest with you. I am looking for someone, and I need some honesty from you. So what are some positive attributes that you possess that would make you be a good someone to run the Federal Reserve?
Well, I look at a spreadsheet and I throw it out the window. I don't believe in
Okay, thank you. Next. Hi. I'm Josh. I just really need to know, looking for someone to run the Federal Reserve. I want to know what positive attributes you bring to the table.
Okay, they gotta be smart, fast, always.
Sorry, that wasn't fast enough. Okay. Federal Reserve, you in charge, go.
I actually know what the Federal Reserve is.
Let's go. Come on, I love you.
Hey guys, see this text that Sarah's gonna from Paul. Oh my God, it's a rumor. We should all, do we even know that it's a fact? Chelsea! Did you see my Snapchat?
Oh my God, yeah. I texted Tobias, but I don't have anything.
I am not waiting around for another stock market crash, okay? I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to start hoarding. I mean, you think going to work and saving money would be the idea, but that's not going to work this time.
Is this gonna be like a dot-com bubble? When Y2K hit and we were in the basement with the rice and the flashlights? Some big party going on tonight, but we're in the basement.
Mr. Anderson, can I go home? I don't know that my mom knows I'm here.
Honey, I am so enjoying this unretirement. I mean, I don't go until 11 and I just do Facebook all day.
You're taking to it very well.
Oh, it's so nice. And the kids are impoverished, but who cares?
It's been so nice to spend all this time
Oh,
together.
I love it.
Dad keeps liking all my photos on Facebook. This is embarrassing.
It's supposed to be working.
Oh my gosh. Look at this one of me making out with my boyfriend. Why did he like that? It's odd.
I sure like that picture of Connie and her new guy.
They're super swell together.
Yeah, they are.
I hate to burst this beautiful bubble, but I've decided that I'm going to go back to work.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I just, I want to give back. I've learned so much. I mean, I have a master's in teaching. I should be helping those young teachers.
And come back to work. So what you do is when the person asks for number 3, you want to know if they want to have a medium or upsized or a super.
Yep.
Okay, I'm glad you came back to work.
Yeah.
people are tired of looking at young, pretty kids.
I've been in the drive-thru for 15 minutes! Where's my extra mayo?
Hi, welcome to Whataburger. How can I help you?
I want my order!
Okay, and instead of saying, what can I get you, I want you to be positive and say, how about trying a number 3 today?
Oh, how would you like to try number 3 today?
How would you like to try number 3?
Boss, some of the other employees and I were wondering if we could probably have some employer-assisted financial investment for our retirement. Because we want to put together some IRAs, maybe a Roth IRA.
They put you up to this, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really want all that, do you?
No.
You just want to go home, don't you? It's not going to happen.
The going home.
Not going home.
So I have to stay here and we don't get the...
Chris, what's he saying? Did you go in?
He's not-
You picked the short straw. You have to talk about our pennies.
Maybe a 3% match for your paycheck. 2%?
The economy has been stable for the past few years.
Chris, what was your ground?
You want more, I'll give you less. I'll bring you down to tears. I'm big business.
I do.
Chris, he's trying to bully you. He's trying to use rhyme and song. You can't be bullied by that, okay? Get back in there and demand your rights.
We together combined are the workers. You are the boss who's acting like a jerker. Give us what we demand. Give something back to the common man.
Come on, you're a person now. Meaning mano a mano. Do it, come on. Someone what you want.
Big business wants you to toil, wants you to fail, wants you to work till you can't see straight anymore.
Come on, boy, tell me what you want right now.
It's not on our page. I wants to drive down the minimum wage. He's not on our page. He wants to drive down the minimum wage.
Think about your age. You have years and years to work forever and end up with S.
This is just San Francisco. I can get another job tomorrow.
This was absolutely a delight for us. We have loved being in Washington, D.C. so much. We have been here for 3-4 nights now.
This is the fourth?
And we will be here for 3 more nights. We have 3 more shows right here. So, if any of you enjoyed the show, the best thing that you could possibly do is please tell somebody else in town about it, or come back yourself one of these next nights, or come back with a friend. in the
Or
next
tell
night.
people how you were touched awkwardly.
We're on the Twitter and we're on the Facebook, and our tweet handle is on your program, as are all of the other shows. And so we would love it so much if you would tell anybody else about us. Also, we're here in part because we love Washington, D.C., and we would love to come back. So if you are somebody who happens to run conferences for a living, or owns a large empty lounge that needs a singer, let us know. Come find us after the show. We would love to talk to you more. So,
until then, can we please actually, let's do a big round of applause for our two guests. Giving all of our guests these wonderful Minnesota gifts that we brought from Minnesota for them. And so these are the ones that I'm most excited about because they're so appropriate. Even though Chris is from Minnesota, so it doesn't make any sense. But here you go. So we got you these piggy banks that say, someone from Minnesota who loves me got me this piggy bank.